This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today we are starting with the Salesforce development. The first thing is, if some of you are joining directly for development, it's not that directly we can learn development without any admin knowledge. Okay, the prerequisite for the development is the administration. It is expected to know about the basics of the Salesforce administration to work with the development. Okay, because when the requirement comes, we don't know. Sometimes we can achieve the requirement with the administration concepts, with the configuration. Sometimes we need to go with the development, or we need to do both to achieve the requirement. So by default, the developer also should know the basics of the admin. Okay, so that is the expectation. Okay, so some of you, if you don't know anything about Salesforce, first try to get some knowledge on the administration. Okay, so now coming back to whatever the development we are going to discuss. At high level, what we are going to discuss, I'll explain, and after that we start with the basics. Okay, so in general, Salesforce, they provide two types of services. Okay, one is software as a service. The CRM applications, sales, marketing, service, all those are the standard CRM applications. Along with that applications, Salesforce offers platform as a service, right? So that means no need to install anything. Suppose if you want to work with some other maybe language like Java or .NET, we need to install some software in our local system. We need to install Java software, or we need to install the .NET software, and on top of that, whatever the programs we run, those will execute. Here, no need to install anything in our local system. That the development environment will be there once you log into Salesforce. Right? It is cloud-based. That means as soon as we log into the Salesforce organization, in the background, that development environment will be there. All we need to do, we need to write the logic and execute and see the results. So such kind of thing. Okay, so this platform as a service, whatever this company is offering. So technically, they are calling this one as force.com or salesforce.com. Nowadays, they are also started calling us salesforce.com platform. Okay, so in general, when we install the Java software, we say it creates the JVM environment, right? In the same way. So in the background, whatever the software available to compile our code, so force.com platform, we say technically force.com or salesforce.com platform. Okay, so on this platform, so what exactly we are going to develop as part of this course? So what we are going to discuss? Okay, so let's understand. So for that, the first thing, here we are like a full stack developer. Okay, so full stack means we work on all the layers of the development. So for example, we have the UI, right? This is the web page. So we click on some button or we do something, right? So when you click on this, in background, what is happening? Some logic will execute, right? Let's say I'm filling this form, and after filling the form, if you click on save, let's say when I click on save, so what will happen? Some business logic will execute, right? It validates the form. If everything is correct, it will try to save this information into database, right? So we have the UI layer. UI means user interface, the web page what we see. From UI, whenever you interact with some buttons or some links or something, some action if you do, in the background system executes some logic. So that we call as business logic. The complex business logic will execute. On successful execution, it will also try to interact with the database, right? In database, the database tables will be there. It will try to save this information into one of the database table, right? It is interacting with the database also. So if you see, as a Salesforce developer, we need to work on all these layers. All these layers we are going to work. Okay, that's why we are like a full stack developer. Okay. So for UI, for business logic, for database, what exactly we are going to discuss? Let's see. Okay. So when you take UI, to develop the UI, obviously any UI, right? Any web page, browser need to show that web page on the one of the website. Through browser only we can see, right? We have Chrome browser, Firefox, and many browsers. In general, by default, browsers can understand HTML and for styles CSS, and for some client-side logic, JavaScript, all these things. So we have to know some basics, right? At least basics. HTML means how it starts, how it ends. Inside that body will be there. CSS means to get the look and feel and styles, we use CSS. JavaScript means some client-side validations. And within the browser system can perform some validations. Such kind of logic we can write using the JavaScript. So these basics we should know. Okay, so all these things we use little bit in some of the core Salesforce related features. Okay, so these are generic. Any UI development, so we have to use these things. Okay, so specific to Salesforce, they are providing Visual Force. Okay, so this is a markup language similar to HTML, right? HTML is a generic one. Visual Force is specific to Salesforce, only Salesforce. You don't see this in any other technology, right? So Visual Force markup language we use. This is more for Salesforce Classic. Okay, we have two types of experience in Salesforce. So we have the Salesforce old look and feel, that is Salesforce Classic. And this is the new look and feel, whatever we are seeing. This is the Lightning experience. To match with the Salesforce Classic, the framework what Salesforce followed, so we need to develop the pages using Visual Force. Okay. So to match with the Lightning experience, at present, whatever we are seeing, to match with this look and feel, if you are developing some custom web pages, so we need to do the Lightning development. People say, do you know Lightning? Okay. In terms of development, if people are talking about Lightning, right? So Lightning development, they say like this. Under this, again, there are two things. So one is ARA, the other one is LWC. Okay. So ARA is one of the open source framework from Salesforce. Using ARA, we can develop the UI which is specific to this framework used by Salesforce for the Lightning experience. This was introduced in 2014. Okay. So, but in 2019, again, Salesforce, they came up with one more framework called LWC. Okay, Lightning Web Components. This is more latest framework. And when compared to ARA, it is having more advantages and it is more faster. Okay. So when we start discussing that, I'll give more differences. Why exactly? How exactly LWC is better than ARA? Okay. Now, if you see for the UI development, so we have Visual Force, we have ARA, we have LWC, and the people ask, I want to learn only LWC because that is latest. Right? Obviously, that is latest, and the future is LWC. Okay. But it's not that at this point of time we should not know anything about Visualforce or Aura. Okay, when you join in many projects, right? So many clients, they are using Salesforce from past 20 years, right? So when you join in most of the existing projects, already they might be developed many pages using Visualforce, Aura, and many things. If they have any enhancement on top of the existing feature, that time it is expected to know about Aura, right? It is expected to know about Visualforce also, right? So that's why at this point of time, we should also know about Visualforce and Aura, okay, along with the LWC. So this is what we discuss as part of the UI development. So we discussed 100% syllabus about Visualforce, and for Aura and LWC up to 30% syllabus, right? 30% syllabus we are going to discuss due to the time. If I explain all these things, it take 4 months or 5 months. Okay, so if you want in depth, this training is separate. For Aura 1 month and LWC 1 month. But up to 30% we are covering. That is sufficient for the interview purpose and enhance your skills on top of that. Okay. So that's about the UI. The later part is business logic, right? The most important thing. Okay. The UI might change. Maybe in future they might introduce one more framework. But this business logic, the language, whatever they provided, is not going to change, right? So maybe they will be introducing some new features, not that they will be changing the language at all, right? So here we use one of the programming language called Apex. Apex is one of the programming language. People ask, should I know about Java or C++ or some other language? No. Okay. So as part of this training, we'll be discussing from basics. What is a program? From that we start and understand all the advanced topics of the Apex language. Okay. So if you want to compare this, it is more similar to C++ or Java. Maybe Java is very famous, right? It is similar to core Java, but not exactly 100% same. Okay, there is a slight difference, and Salesforce simplified many things to work with this programming language. Okay, I can say when compared to Java, it is easy. Okay, so a lot of headache will be not there. Okay, we'll see. You'll see once we start developing. Okay, so this is the programming language we use for the business logic, right? Apex programming language. Okay, so for database, we need to use some commands, right? Database commands. So we use the DML, we use SOQL, we use SOSL. Okay, these are the some of the database languages to interact with the database. DML is to alter the data. If you want to save some information into database, or if you want to modify or delete, that time we use DML. If you want to retrieve the information which is present already in the database, that time we use SOQL or SOSL. More about this when we start, we'll discuss. Okay, but maybe this it takes only 1 or 2 hours. Let's say only 2 classes to understand about all these database commands, right? That much easy. So you don't see much complex like people compare with SQL, right? So in general, for other database, SQL is one of the famous query language, right? So you don't see that much complex queries. The basic queries are sufficient, and with the 2 hours of the classes, we can easily understand about this database commands. Okay, so it's very easy, I can say this part. Yeah, this take few weeks to understand. This takes few weeks to understand, right? But this is very easy. So all these things we discuss as part of this development training. And also people ask about integration. Okay, so what is this integration? Why we need to use integration? If you see, client might use different technologies for different business modules. Okay, for example, one of the client, they are using Salesforce for CRM, right? Customer Relationship Management. So let's say the client is using SAP for some other business module. Okay, let's say ERP. So maybe some other Java application for some other business module. Okay, same client, they have applications on different platforms. Okay, the application on the Salesforce platform, the application on SAP, the application on other platform, all those applications belongs to same client, right? So assume that the client is Amazon. Okay, Amazon company. They are using Salesforce, they are using SAP, they are using many other softwares, right? So they want to establish communication between the application, whatever they developed on Salesforce, with the application, whatever they have on SAP platform, right? So if you want to establish communication between the cross platforms, right? This is a completely different platform provided by Salesforce. This is completely different platform. So if you want to establish the communication between the different platforms, we do integration, right? So we do integration using web services. Okay. So using web services, we do the integration. Most famous, we use SOAP API integration, the REST API integration. So as part of this training, we also discuss about this integration part. Okay. So SOAP API integration and the REST API integration on day to day. So what exactly we should know, all those things we are going to understand. Okay. So this is about the integration. Okay. So that's all at high level. Okay. Again, for Apex, what are the different topics? For Visualforce, what are the different topics? You can see the syllabus. Okay. These are high level topics what we are going to understand. Okay. And also, don't think that directly you can learn development without having at least basic knowledge on the administration. It is expected to know the Salesforce administration. Okay, if I say about object field, right? Maybe if you don't know about admin, you might not know what is object, right? Object is a database table. Field is a column in the table. So at least those basics you should know. Then you can understand easily. Okay. Now let's focus on understanding the basics. First, we start with this Apex language. Right. This is most important thing. Okay. So this is what. So for everywhere, this is what we use. Okay. So first we start with the Apex programming language. Okay. So maybe here Apex programming language. The first thing when we start learning about any programming language is that programming language is case sensitive or case insensitive. That's the first point. Right? The first point is Apex is case insensitive. Insensitive. Meaning, what is the meaning? Let's say if I use something like this, later if I refer like this, or later if I refer like this, even though there is a change in the case, still it can recognize this. Okay, so it is case insensitive. Okay, so even though you don't maintain the same cases how you define, if you refer, still it will recognize that one. So that we call as case insensitive. But other languages, right? Java is very famous. Java is case sensitive. I think .NET also case sensitive. Okay, but Apex is case insensitive. That is one of the first point. Okay. The next thing, so we should know the basics, right? So first of all, what is a program? So when you say program, how technically we call the elements present in a program? Okay, to understand, especially for the people from different background. Okay, so I'm going to open one of the file. This is the file I'm opening. Okay. If you see this image, right? So let's compare with one of the natural language. Okay. So on day to day, we speak some language, right? Let's say maybe English is one of the language, right? So technically, right, in English, how we write one paragraph with multiple sentences, right? How we write the sentence with multiple words, right? In the same way, if you compare the program with the paragraph, so maybe here, technically, while writing the programs, so instead of paragraph, here we call as program, right? So paragraph is set of sentences, right? This program also set of sentences, but here instead of sentence, we call as statement, right? Maybe in English we call as sentence, but technically here in the programming we call as statement. And also when you keep some sentences in not in a proper order, and if you write a paragraph, the paragraph won't give some meaning, right? If you want to have a meaningful paragraph to understand by someone, you have to place all your sentences in a proper order. Here also same thing. We write statements. The statements should be in a proper order. Okay, and sorry. So proper order. So that we call as flow. By placing all the statements in a proper order, we form the program. And also here I am saying the sentence will be formed with multiple words by following the grammar. So if you don't follow the grammar, right? If someone started speaking newly, they might do some mistakes while speaking, while forming the sentences, right? So we have to follow the grammar, and so that when we talk, it will be more meaningful, right? In the same way here, instead of words, here we call as tokens. Okay, technically, in a program, whatever the word you see, each and every word we call as a token. Okay, that is a generic name. Multiple tokens by following the syntax. Maybe in English we say grammar, right? But here we technically call as syntax. Syntax means as per the programming guidelines, you are forming the statement or not. So that's the syntax. Okay. So multiple tokens by combining, by following the syntax, we form the statement. And also when you say word, the word can be either noun or adjective or verb. In the same way here, token can be, it can be a keyword or it can be an identifier, it can be an operator. Okay, so like this, just compare with one of the language which we speak, right? Why we use the language? The other people can understand if you talk. This program is system should understand. The computer should understand. So what we give the instruction, right? To make the system understand, we write the programs. Let's say you are going to ATM and withdrawing, right? So when you enter some amount and withdraw, how system is understanding? Inside that, some language like this, they might be written and supplying these instructions to the computer, and based on that, it will give the result. So for that purpose, okay. So just compare and understand the technical things. Okay, so we have a program. Program will be formed with multiple statements. Statement is like a sentence. So how we end the sentence in English with the full stop, right? In programming language, in Apex, we end with semicolon. Instead of full stop, we use a semicolon like that. So slight differences will be there. Okay. So just to get to know this terminology. Okay. Now, so when exactly we call as keyword identifier and what are the tokens? To show that, first let me focus on the different statements. Right? When you start learning the English language, right? First we start with some words and some sentences. First, simple sentences we try to frame and speak, right? In the same way here, this programming language to understand. First, let's focus on some statements, how we write the statement. and what are the different types of statements. In English also we have different types of sentences. You say simple sentence, maybe compound sentences, right? Sometimes we combine multiple sentences using and, right? Or using if. Let's say we say because and again add one more sentence. Here also we have different types of statements. So first let's focus on the different types of statements, and in that process we'll be knowing all the basics. Okay, so first, types of statements. Okay, in any programming language mostly we see this, right? So why we write a statement and what is the purpose? Okay, there are different categories of the statements. I'll be listing out all the statements, and we take examples for each type. Okay, the first type is memory statements. Maybe first I'll list out all the types and explain. Okay, the next one is arithmetic or logical statements. Okay, the next one is conditional statement. Next one, looping or controlling statements. I'll explain what is that and all those things. Okay, input or output statements. So all these are statements only, but we are classifying those statements to understand easily. Okay, so when exactly we say memory statement, when exactly we say it is a conditional statement, we are going to understand. First, we need to understand about the memory statement. Okay, so this memory statement, why we need this one? So what is this memory? Okay, so memory is to hold the information, to store the data. We need memory. Suppose say on day to day, so all of us, I think we have laptop, right? So what is your laptop hard disk capacity? So what is your laptop memory? People sometimes ask, right? So I have 1 terabyte. Maybe some laptops you might be having 2 terabyte, right? So that means up to that much data you can store, right? It can be a video or image or anything, right? Up to that much data you can store in the memory. In the same way, when you deal with a program, so what is the purpose of writing the program? Any program, it takes some data as input and apply some logic and gives the result, right? Why we use calculator? We give some numbers. Let's say I need to add 20 numbers. If I do manually, it take a lot of time. I give all those 20 numbers to the calculator, right? We have to supply instruction, right? With the 20 numbers you want to add or subtract or multiply, you have to give instruction. Based on that, calculator will give the result, right? So all those 20 numbers, where it will store, right? So it needs some memory to hold all the 20 numbers, whatever you are typing, right? So to store the data, whatever we input, system needs memory. Okay, so to hold that memory, so we decide by using the memory statement. How much memory you want to allocate? Do you want to allocate same memory for all the types? That is not good. Okay, so on day to day when you deal with the data, we deal with the different types of data, right? Maybe number is one type, date is a different type, string, right? Text is a different type. Let's say I want to store only true or false, is a different type. To manage the memory in an efficient way, right? If you don't mention the type, let's say every time it is allocating the same space, right? Maybe for true or false, it's not needed to have more memory, right? Only less memory is sufficient. Memory will be wasted. To avoid that, in most of the programming languages, we see data types, right? While allocating the memory, we mention which type of memory you want to allocate, right? If you mention the type, system will take care of allocating that much memory, so that memory will be utilized in a proper way. Okay, so the purpose of the memory statement is to store our input data or maybe the output data. Right? Maybe after doing the calculation, whatever the output we see, that also needs some space. So for that, so before we write the memory statement, we should know about the data type, right? So what are the data types? How we mention the data type? Okay. So first we understand about the data types. Once we know about data type, by using that data type, we mention how much memory we want. System will understand and allocate only that much memory. Okay. So the available data types for Apex language. Here, whatever I am listing out, which are present in the Apex programming language, not for other languages. Maybe in other languages, whatever the data types available might be different. Programming language to programming language, the data types might vary. Okay. So here, specific to Apex. Okay. So the one of the first data type, blob, is one of the data type. Right. Blob means binary large object. Okay. It holds either the files, right? It holds to hold files or attachments, right? So the attachment or the file can be, it is a PDF file, or maybe it might be a notepad file, or it might be an image. Any file, if you want to store programmatically, we use blob data type. So just to understand. Okay, going forward, when we deal with the programming, let's say you want to store one of the notepad file, you want to store one of the Excel file, you need to store in the blob format. Okay. So the next type, Boolean, is one of the type. We use this to hold either true or false. Right? If you have a requirement to store either true or false, we use this one. Let's say, is the candidate is educated? Yes or no? We need to give yes or no, right? So in those kind of situations, this will be useful. The next thing is date. Okay, date data type. So this one to hold the date, right? Based on the country, the date format might be different, right? US, MM, DD, YY. They follow this format. Maybe in India, we follow DD, MM, YY, right? Based on the country, this might vary. So to hold these formats of data, we use this date type. Okay. So when I say MM, you have to replace with the month. Let's say 0, maybe 06, 07, based on the month, right? DD means the date, 15, 16, whatever. So it's like that. So that is the date type. The next one is we have date type, right? Along with the date, it also holds the time, right? Including the hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds also. Okay. So that is date time. So going forward, you will see some examples for the date time. The next one is decimal. Decimal is one of the data type. So this decimal type, it holds the number, right? Number along with the decimal digit. Let's say if you are talking about the price, so let's say $5.6, right? Or on day to day, so the prices might be, let's say 100.27 rupees or whatever. So when you have like that, so mostly currency and a few things we need in a decimal. Let's say weight, right? You are purchasing something, right? For weight, how they calculate? They don't say 1 kg, 2 kg, right? It might be 1.5 kg also. So to deal with such kind of data, right? Numbers with decimal, right? We use, for example, maybe 12.45, right? So let's say 1.5 years experience I have. We say like that. To hold such kind of numbers, we use decimal type. Okay. The next thing, we have double, one of the data type. The bigger decimal value. Let's say you have a huge decimal value, right? Have a huge number like this. To hold this one, okay, so practically there is a maximum capacity for this decimal. So if you want beyond that, if you see when you study mathematics, we also see exponential, right? You see something like 7 exponential, something like this. So to hold these kind of things, we use the double. Okay, so to hold the very, very bigger decimal values, we use double. Okay, simply how we understand this one. Let's say bigger decimal value. Okay, to hold like that, we use this double type. Okay, mostly we don't use. I never use a double in my experience. Okay, maybe if you are dealing with some mathematics related kind of project, we might need it's like that. Okay, the next thing is integer. Okay, so maybe before integer we have ID. Okay, so ID, if you know about the basics of the Salesforce administration, ID, when we create the record, system generates the record ID. It can be a 15-digit record ID or 18-digit record ID. Each and every record in Salesforce will be having a unique record ID generated by system, either 15-digit or 18-digit. To hold that 15-digit or 18-digit record ID, we use this ID data type. Okay, so just understand about that one. And the next one is integer. Is one of the data type. Integer is also a number, but in some situations we don't want a decimal. For example, I'm counting. We say 1, 2, 3, right? We don't say 1.5, 1.6, right? So while counting quantity, when you say how much quantity you want, we say maybe 10 or 5 or whatever quantity. So in those kind of situations, we need some rounded numbers. We don't want the decimal digits. So that time we go with the integer. Okay, so just understand about that. The next one is long. It is the bigger integer value, right? There is a very big value for this number. That time we use this long. Rarely, so I never use this. So mostly we don't use. Okay. So the other type, object, is one of the type. Sometimes we don't know which type of data we are dealing. The data can be a number, it can be a text, it can be a date, or it can be anything. So when you see such kind of situations while doing the development, that time we go with the object, which stores in a generic way. Okay, we'll come across those kind of situations. That time we should know that we need to use object. Object is generic to hold any type of data, right? So that means, can I store integer value? Yes. Can I store double value? Yes. It can accept any kind of value. Okay. So that is object, which is more powerful to hold the generic information. Okay. The next thing is string. String. Starting with single character to a paragraph and big text also, we can store using string, right? So only the rule is the value should be inside the single quote, okay, not double quote, only single quote. In the single quote, we have to give the string, right? So maybe it can be one character, right? It can be, right, multiple characters, or it can be a sentence, right? You can, to hold that, we use a string. Okay, the rule is it should be inside the single quote. That's the rule. The next one is time, to hold the time. Okay, going forward we see how exactly the format will be. Okay, so these are the data types available. Okay, whenever we define memory, as a developer, we know, right? So in the requirement, which type of data we are dealing, we decide one of the data types so that system will allocate only that much memory. Right? How much memory? That again, you can see documentation, right? Remembering how much memory each type holds is very difficult. You can see the documentation if you want to really know about that. Okay, so now we know about the data type. Now let's define one of the memory statement and understand how it works. Okay, so let's say I want to store one of the person information. Okay, so when you want to store a person information, let's say I want the person first name. Okay, so if you want person first name, the name of the person should be which type. So as a developer, we can recognize. Okay, so if you see these data types, name is like a text. For text, out of all these things, this is suitable, right? String is suitable. So now, so since I want to define store one of the person name, I'm just mentioning string, right? String type. I'm storing, let's say I want to store the person first name and last name. Okay. So we have to give some name to recognize, right? So if you don't give the name, we cannot recognize that person, right? Let's say there are 10 people. How we recognize the people? How the people will respond? We need to call them with the name. When you call them, they'll respond and they will talk, right? In the same way, so when you have the data present in the memory, so what is the address, where it is? Okay, so we need to give some name so that we can call that again and again and refer that information, right? So here we need to mention the type. So here I'm just giving first name. Okay, this is the name, and also right, one sentence. Maybe we end with the full stop. Here, statement we end with semicolon. It's ending of the statement. This is our first statement we are writing, right? So string is the data type to mention which type of data you want to store. We need to give space, and this name can be anything. As a developer, we decide whatever the name you want. Here I'm giving the name as first name. Some people only give like this. Some people only give like this, right? It's all based on the developer who is developing. So I'm giving like this, and a semicolon means end of the statement. So this is our first statement. Okay, and also if I want to allocate, if I want to store last name also, what we need to do? Again, one more data type, right? String. So last name. So this will hold the last name, and also this first name and last name are of the same type, right? Since both are same type, we can also say comma. If you give like this, how system will understand? With the string type, allocate two memory spaces to hold two text values, right? One is first name and the other one is we are calling as last name. So this is a way. I think let me keep my charger. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So now the thing is we allocated memory to hold two text values. Okay. In the same way, let's say I want to store the age of a person. I want the person age. I want only like rounded value, like 25, 26, something like that. So that time, which type is suitable? If you see, we have numbers either decimal or integer. So if you don't want to maintain the decimal digits, We go with integer, right? Integer, say age, right? So let's say I'm giving the age as 21. So you can also give the default value, right? So while allocating the memory, I'm also giving the default value 21. If you don't give anything, what will happen? Let's say you allocated memory and you are not storing anything, what will happen? By default, these variables hold null. Null means we allocated memory, but we did not store anything. So that time, whatever by default it holds is a null. Okay, so like that. Now we have these statements, right? On day to day, technically, if you see, I told that all these are tokens, right? Here we have these two statements. If you don't know what to call those, everything we call as a token. Right? String is a token, first name is a token, semicolon is a token, everything is a token, right? So, but there are specific things we call as keyword, identifier, and operator. So, which one we call as keyword? Which one we call as identifier? Okay, so here in these statements, so keyword means in general it is a token provided by the system and which we cannot change the meaning. Okay, here in the above two statements. So what is string? String is provided by system. They are saying that when you mention string and give space and give some names, it will allocate the memory to hold the text. Is it possible to store date in string type? There is no way to change that behavior. Always to string means it will accept only the text value. You cannot directly give maybe the time or double or decimal or some other things, okay, directly. So in the above two statements, right, keywords, string is a keyword, okay, which is provided by the system, which we cannot change the meaning. Integer is also a keyword by system, right? It is also a token provided by system, which we cannot change the meaning. Always integer means it take only number value. So that is also a keyword. And also I told that if you don't store anything by default, it hold null, right? So once after allocating the memory, if you don't assign any value, I told that by default it holds null, right? So null is also a keyword, right? Null means as a developer, how we need to understand memory is allocated, but we did not store anything. That point of time, whatever it maintains, that value is null. So all these are provided by system and which we cannot change the meaning. So like you can say all these data types are the keywords, right? So this technically we call as keyword. So what is identifier? Right? Here we have identifier, right? Identifier means for our identification purpose as a developer, whatever the name we give, that we call as identifier. Right? In the above program, first name, as a developer, I gave that name. Maybe some other developer will give some other name. Right? It's in the developer hands. So why we are giving that name? To identify, right? To identify the first name what we are storing. So these things we call as identifiers, which is in the hands of programmer. They decide what is the name we want to give. In the above two statements, first name, last name, age, all those are the identifiers, right? So first name, last name, age, all those are the identifiers, okay? But when we say identifier, technically on day to day, people cannot understand, right? So once you started working, if you say the identifier first name, the identifier last name, people don't understand. It is more technical word, okay? So we also call these identifiers as data members, right? Again, this is also uh, when you read some textbooks or when you read some books, technical books, people refer data members, right? So data member means which can hold information. It's like the memory name, whatever we are giving, right? So people sometimes say data member, but on day to day, the terminology is variable, right? So we call as variables. First name is one variable, last name is one variable. So when you say variable, people will understand, right? That is on day to day, the name instead of identifier we call as variable, right? Variable means you need to understand as a developer whatever the name we gave for the memory, that we call as variable. On day to day going forward, I'm going to say as variable. So far I am saying it is the name given to the memory, right? Going forward I'll say variable. So when I say variable, you need to understand it is the name which we give to allocate some memory, right? So just understand that one, okay? And also here we have literals, right? Operators. We also have operators, right? So operators means here equal to is one operator. It is an assignment operator. If you use the plus to add some numbers, that we call as the addition operator, right? Plus, minus, all those are the operators. Okay, in our above program, equal to is an operator, right? So we have literals, right? Here they are saying literals. Literals means numbers. In the above program 21 we are giving, right? That is a literal number. So we also have strings, right? Strings. So let's say for the first name, right? I can assign, let's say first name is equal to, here I can give some name, right? Okay, so this is a string, right? So maybe that value as a default also you can give. Let's say while allocating directly, if you want to give, you can also give. Otherwise, as a separate statement, we can give, right? So like this, I'm referring that first name, and into that we are assigning the name Chandra. Okay, so like that. So that is a string. So these are the types. Okay, so that's it. This is our first statement, and so we are understanding technically how we call these things. Okay, so if you don't know, each and every word in a program is a token. Okay, again, tokens can be specific type. It can be a keyword, right? These things. It can be an identifier. It can be an operator. It can be a literal. It can be a string. Okay, just understand these basics. Okay, these are the basics. Now, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, everything. I mean, any word we call as a token. It's like in English, when you see the paragraph, we say word, right? Word means it can be anything. Each and every whatever we have in the sentence, we call as a word. In a even more specific way, if you want to mention, we say verb, we say noun. In the same way here, instead of token, we call as keyword, we call as operator, we call as literal, like that. Okay, so just understand. So now, few things we should follow as a advanced, maybe as a experienced developer. Okay, so here two things I'm going to explain. One is for sure what we need to follow, and the other one is even though you don't follow, nothing will happen, but we should follow. Okay, so one is indentation. Okay, even though you don't follow, your program will execute and you see the result. But indentation means the program standards, right? As a experienced developer, everyone follows some standards. Those standards we call as indentation, right? So if you don't follow also, nothing will happen, right? Technically, program works without following this. Okay, but if you don't follow, some other developer will suffer. Okay, so the thing is, indentation means the standards, right? Now, if you see, I'm defining some of the variables, right? Variables means the name given to the memory. So while defining, if I define like this, do you have any idea what I'm going to store? Don't know, right? We cannot guess anything, right? So we cannot guess anything. So we should not define the variables like this. So when you define something, it should be something meaningful, right? So let's say, do you guess what I'm going to store? Yeah, we are going to store some name of the area, right? So the thing is, when we, as one of the senior developer, so we have to follow the standards. Give the name of the variable as meaningful whenever it is possible, right? So that is one of the point. So if you don't give, if you say A, B, C, X, Y, Z, your program will work, right? In future, if some other developer see your program and try to enhance, they don't know A means what exactly. They need to again go and see, and they need to struggle understanding. Okay, that's why. So give the variable names as meaningful, right? Meaningful names we need to give. And also, if you observe, right, whenever I give some names, I'm starting this with the small letter, and after that, I'm giving the capital letter. We follow the camel case notation. Camel case means we start with the small letter, and if there are multiple words, so each and every word before starting we give capital letter, right? So maybe here, if I give only this name, no need to give anything. Area is fine. If I give area name, area is a different word, name is a different word, and we are combining. So that's why we are giving as capital. So I mean, if you don't follow, also it will work. If you follow, it is meaningful, and people understand. Some experienced developer wrote this logic. Okay, so follow camel case notation. So meaning my first variable, right? Let's say city name. When you have multiple words, right? So we start with a small letter, and after that each and every word, right? Here two words are there after first word. So this is the one of the point. Okay, like this, we add many points here under the indentation going forward. We start, right? So that's about that. The next thing is first pure what we need to follow, right? So is it fine to give any name for the variable, right? Syntax, right? I'll say syntax. Syntax means it check the is it correct or not. Our program is correct or not, right? As per the programming standards, as per the rules of the program, we need to write statements. Otherwise, system will give error at the time of saving the program, right? For variables, so what is the syntax we need to follow? Okay, since we don't have more time, I think we discuss tomorrow, right? So variables, is it possible to have numbers while defining the variable? Yes, it can have, but it should not start with number. So like that, there are some rules. So about those rules we discuss and continue for the other things. Okay. So tomorrow after these things, we discuss few more things, and we start with these different operators. arithmetic and logical operators. These things we use for the calculations, right? So already we are using assignment, how to assign a value, right? In the same way, I want to add two numbers. I want to subtract, multiply, divide. I want to compare whether two values are same or not. So those kind of things we deal tomorrow. Okay. So before ending today, any questions, anyone?
Sir, the camel case used in Apex program only.
In most of the programming languages, people follow the same standards. Here also same. If someone is from Java background or .NET background, you see those people also following the same, mostly, right? So it's like that. So any questions before ending today? Okay. So for next today and next 2 days, I'll be sharing these notes and recording through email. Okay. So check your email, including spam folder. Okay, and follow.
So, one more question.
Yeah.
This is for how many classes we are going to learn admin?
So this is not for admin, right?
Okay, it's for both, right? Developer plus admin, right?
For this time slot, whatever I'm teaching, already we are done with the admin. Okay. Already we are done with the admin and I'm starting the development for this time slot. Okay.
Okay, so what's the time slot for both? Developer plus admin one?
That is from January 4th.
Okay.
January 4th, 7 p.m. IST. Okay. So it starts with admin followed by development. The sequence is first admin.
Yes.
After admin, development. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So any other questions before ending today? Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.